All right, we are now joined by Kentucky head coach Mark Stoops and Penn State head coach James Franklin. We'll start with an opening statement from each coach, Stoops first, then Franklin, and then we'll take questions.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. It's going to be a real challenge. Playing Coach Franklin at Penn State, a storied program. We look forward to the opportunity. It's been a great week in Orlando, and anxious to get the game going here.
Yeah, very similar for us. The bowl's been unbelievable. We had an opportunity last night to spend some time together as a staff. I do want to thank VRBO and the Citrus Bowl. They've been fantastic. And the one thing I would say that me and Coach were both talking about is probably one of the few bowls that I've been a part of that is really doing something for this community. The other 364 days, the commitment that they've made to this community is pretty impressive, and kind of caught me off guard because I've never really heard that before. So that was impressive. Our guys have had a great time. It's been a really good balance between events and practice. And I'm a huge Coach Stoops fan. When you get to be around other really good coaches that are in it for the right reasons and are doing it in a first-class manner, and when it's time to compete, obviously we're gonna be going as hard as we possibly can for our organizations and our programs. But when it's time to be able to just talk ball and organizational structure and things like that, it's been great. So we are honored and humbled to be a part of this game and to be competing against such a storied program of Kentucky, and obviously I got a little history in the SEC as well, so I know what coaches compete against week in and week out.
All right, we'll start for questions. We have mics on either end of the room, so if you just raise your hand, we'll get one to you. Start with you in the front.
Coach Franklin, I'm curious about what the biggest difference you see prepping for this Kentucky team versus when you were at Vanderbilt.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, although we kind of live in a society, and specifically when it comes to college football, that everybody wants a quick fix, it doesn't work like that. And Coach needed time to come in and get his philosophy in place and his program in place, and for all of us that takes time. That takes a number of years, and that's what you see right now. You see a football program that has taken on his identity. They're tough, they're hard-nosed, they play really hard, they play together, they got really good schemes in offense, defense, and special teams, and then they've done a good job of going out and finding talent. And what I've been impressed by is finding talent in areas that probably Kentucky hasn't gone to in the past. Obviously, Coach's background in Ohio helps and makes a whole lot of sense. I'm not real happy that they got one specific guy out of New Jersey who should probably been playing at Penn State. But that's kind of what I see. They've been creative. I was fortunate this summer. We both have been a part of a leadership summit that we've been doing the last couple of years, and this past year was at Kentucky. So I got a chance to see their facilities, which are phenomenal. I got a chance to spend some time around him and the administration, and that was good. So I think that's just what I see. I see a guy that has a very clear vision of how he wants to do things at the University of Kentucky, and now he's been there long enough that's in place, and that's why you see the success that they're having.
We'll stay on the right one row back.
Mark, you had hinted early on this year about how good your team would end up being, and not all of us believe that. It's hard to believe that you're sitting up here on such a big game. Could you give us an idea of what some of the indications were very early on that this would be a very special team?
Yeah, sure. I think the big thing was we had some experience. We had some talent. You could see, that coming to fruition this year with the guys that have been around. Like James mentioned, they've been here 3-4 years. They played a lot of football. We have 16 seniors. Each of those seniors contribute. That's a big indicator. I think how they work, the unity that this team has, those are a lot of things that people don't see. How hard they're working last winter through winter conditioning. We had a great spring. through the summer, the way guys were training. So those are things I felt very comfortable with. The leadership of this team, we had some talent. Sure, we had some holes to fill, but we felt good about our options, and really the biggest thing is the attitude of this team. So that was good. What James failed to mention is we spent some time in the offseason. I lost him for a couple hours. He was in our staff room checking out some tape. He kind of saw this game coming, I think.
We're gonna go over on the left, a couple rows back.
James, right here. We saw the seniors get carried off the field after practice yesterday, from Trace to Torrance. What do you think that class's biggest contribution to your program was, and how different is that class from previous classes?
Yeah, I think, they're a very historic, class in our program. Go down as one of the winningest classes, in Big Ten era. I think it is important that you differentiate, when you look in Penn State's history, when we joined the Big Ten and before, because I think, it's a different story. And I think this senior class, is going to go down as one of the most successful, senior classes in Big Ten era. And I think you got to look at it in perspective of when they came to Penn State in a very challenging time. And then I think a lot of those guys, obviously there's a tremendous story. You got a number of these guys that were committed to us at the previous institution, Vanderbilt, obviously, and were willing to follow us, to Penn State. And I think, we talk about that all the time. I know, the recruiting rule book says you're supposed to, commit to a school, but the reality is a lot of parents, a lot of kids commit to coaches and people that they trust. So, to have this group really kind of come in and battle through some early challenges and being at 65 scholarships and, those guys kind of never wavering and really have kind of been the foundation that we built this thing on the last few years is exciting, and those guys, will forever hold a special place in my heart. I got a really cool text last night from Trace McSorley's high school coach, kind of looking back over this whole journey that we've been through together. And, as you guys know, Trace's sister babysits our kids, and, there's just strong bonds. Amani's family and Koa Farmer from California and so on and so forth. Torrance Brown, it's funny, Coach, 2 years ago we had 3 players starting on our defense from Alabama. I don't know if that's ever happened, but obviously our ties and relationships from the previous school help with that. I think, for us, that's something we always do that last practice. We honor those guys, and they get to choose who's going to carry them off the field. And, it's an exciting time because I know they're all going to go on and do wonderful things, but it's also sad. I'd like to have 4 more years with Trace McSorley if possible. Coach, I don't know if you know any ways through the NCAA to get that done.
I wish.
Yeah.
I have a few also.
Yeah, I actually was trying to do the opposite with that. I was following your running back and your outside linebacker on Twitter. I'll send them direct messages about, maybe, yeah. But that didn't work. Yeah, they're playing.
I heard about that.
Yeah.
More questions? Raise your hands if we can get a mic to you. Coaches, you mind if I ask you what your favorite part of the trip to Orlando has been?
Yeah, I would say, for me, I like this time of year because at Penn State, obviously our guys, have some, pretty serious academic challenges, and I like this time of year where you're able to really be football and football only, and I don't want that to be misinterpreted. I'm as big a believer as the college model and the student athlete as there is out there, but I do like the time of years where you're able to just focus on football, especially back in Happy Valley, and be able to do that. We don't get a whole lot of time at Penn State. In our summer camp, we don't really get a whole lot of camp time where it's just football. Our guys are taking class, pretty much throughout the entire camp. So I like time of year where our guys are able to focus just on football and kind of get a little bit of an idea what it's like to be an NFL football player from that perspective. And then I think the other thing I like is, as coaches, we probably all struggle with, the life-work balance, the time we get with our family and kids. But I also do understand that our job and our profession create a bunch of opportunities. My wife and kids are living their best life, down here. They've been to Busch Gardens, they've been to Discovery Cove, they've done something every single day, out having a heck of a time. So, we're blessed and fortunate, to be able to do this and provide these opportunities and experiences for our kids as well.
Same thing. I think just spending time with our team without having to go to school and study hall and all those things. So just spending time with our players on the practice field, in meetings, and then enjoying Orlando. The beautiful sunshine and going to parks. This has been an incredible bowl. The people, the hospitality, the hosts, everybody's just been phenomenal. Our players have thoroughly enjoyed themselves. We have quite a few children on our coaching staff, so we have a bunch of kids, and they've all had a really good time and enjoying themselves. So I think it's just that balance of working hard and practicing, but also having some fun and enjoying the moment.
Got a couple over here.
For Mark, I just want to get your impressions of Trace McSorley, what you've seen from him on film, and what it's like for a head coach to have a 3-year starter who's been as successful as he is.
Yeah, you see, a great football player, but you see the characteristics, you see the toughness, the leadership, everything runs through him. He wants the team on his back, and you just got to have great respect for a player like that. You could just see it with the way he plays, with the attitude, the toughness, and makes plays across the board. So just an awful lot of respect for him.
Over here on the right, second row.
It's for both coaches, since you're both 9-3. What is the significance, for a coach, team, and program in getting to a 10-win season?
Yeah, it's extremely important to us. Obviously, competing against Penn State, the history that they have, the storied program, that's very important to us and motivating for us. Playing Penn State and competing against Penn State, playing on New Year's Day, getting a 10th victory, it's very important. It hasn't happened very many times in the history of our program. So to get 10, hit that milestone is another motivating factor.
Yeah, I think it's very important for a lot of different things. I think it's a benchmark. You probably have 2 different benchmarks for programs across the country. Some programs are benchmarked on going to bowl games. That's kind of the first level, and then I think the next level is 10-win seasons. We've been fortunate, the last 2 years to be able to get 10 or more wins. We got a chance to do that for the 3rd time in a row. That's never happened at Penn State, since joining the Big Ten. And I think, and again, a place like Penn State, when you can start making some comments about things that have never happened in our history, and we've played a lot of good football at Penn State for a long time. I think it's special. So for us, you have the 10-win motivation. You have 3 10 wins or more seasons in a row motivation. You have sending these seniors out the right way, and the legacy that they've left. And then the most important thing for us is just being 1-0 and playing well against a really, really good opponent. So it's it's a combination of all those things. And I think as coaches, with 120 something players, they're all going to be motivated differently. So I think it's important you kind of talk about it from a lot of different perspectives. A freshman's going to be motivated different than a redshirt senior, and so on.
On the left.
This is for James. James, now that you've had a chance to take a longer look at Josh Allen, what are your impressions of him and the Kentucky defense as a whole?
Yeah, I think first of all, they got a really good scheme. The way they play their front, the outside linebackers, and they've obviously put him in position to make plays, and he's got a lot of different skills. I think it's pretty interesting. I've had some discussions with our players because we got some players that are some undersized DNs, and I think sometimes they kind of have a discussion in their mind, or they got people in their ear telling them, well, you're really more of a 3-4 outside linebacker. Well, this guy's 260 pounds, so I think the reality in a lot of ways, a really good 3-4 outside linebacker and a 4-3 DN, they're very similar. Obviously a 3-4 outside linebacker, they ask him to do a little bit more things, but they scheme really well to put him in position to make plays, which is obviously what you need to do. And he's able to impact the game in a lot of different ways, whether it's sacks, whether it's tackles for loss, whether it's in coverage. So it's impressive. It really is. Obviously we're going to have to try to do some things to try to limit his impact. That's really what we do in every game. Lynn Bowden's another guy. Obviously that concerns you. Obviously the running back Snell concerns you. I was actually out recruiting, and I was in Snell's high school. I saw his there was an article and a picture on the wall was autographed. Lynn Bowden we recruited, so I know all about Lynn. And Lynn sent me a message on Twitter this week. Hey, coach, it's gonna be great to see you. And I'm like, I hope I feel the same way after the game. I just, what's impressive for them is kind of what we're all looking for. Is you want players, at every level of the defense and on every unit that can hurt you. And that's what we try to do, is try to identify who those guys are, and then we challenge our players to say, hey, what are we going to do to make sure that Lynn Bowden doesn't impact the game and be what we call a game wrecker. Obviously, these guys are going to make plays in the game, but we got to limit their impact as much as we possibly can through having an awareness of where they're at all the time on the field, and then doing some things scheme-wise that we think puts them in challenging positions.
Across the aisle on the right, halfway down.
Mark, this week it's been a balance between fun and getting the work in. How have your guys handled that, and when do you want that switch flipped to where it's total focus on the game?
Yeah, absolutely. The nice thing about our team, again, is we have a lot of seniors. We have very good leadership. So I felt good. I felt comfortable with the balance all week. I feel like the guys, when it's time to come in and lock in at meetings and go to practice, they've done a really good job. We've been very energized at practice, and again, that shouldn't be hard to motivate our team at this point. Playing Penn State and playing for 10 victories, playing on January 1st, that's motivating enough. And so I feel good about the balance of our players, and we talked about it yesterday about getting flipping that switch and getting locked in and getting ready to go. So it's still a challenge. Guys have quite a few people start rolling into town, and family and friends for them start coming around, and that's good. And we want them to spend time with their families, but you get 2-3 days out from the game, it's time to start honing in and getting ready to go.
Up here on the front row.
Mark, you're sitting here today getting ready to play a January 1st bowl game. Your first presser, you were announcing you had a player and a coach battling cancer. I'm just curious, the emotional roller coaster this season has been and how it's impacted the actual product on the field.
Yeah, I think that in a way did unify the team even more, make us really keep things in perspective. What Josh Paschal's gone through and Coach Slarman, it keeps things in perspective. This is still just a game. It's very important. It's a way of life for us, and so obviously we know how that is and how important and how many people we affect by our play. But when you start looking at things like that, it keeps things in perspective, and our team has really rallied around those two.
Coach Stoops, Coach Franklin, thank you for your time.
Could I say one thing real
Yes,
quick?
sir.
Last thing I'd like to say is, when I was at Vanderbilt, we would play Kentucky in basketball or football, and the Big Blue Nation would come and take over Nashville. It was pretty strong. I put a tweet out each week that says Kentucky, 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 and I do that every week. I think sometimes when you play a new opponent, they don't really kind of understand that. Well, I don't think, Coach, the Big Blue Nation liked that very much because they went hard on Twitter, and there was a lot of kind of, I think, misinterpretation of what that's about. That's strictly a message to our team and our fan base that we're locked and loaded and completely focused on our next opponent. So if you could, Coach, if you could ask the Big Blue Nation to kind of leave me alone on Twitter, because they've been brutal.
Absolutely not. You need to be hostile. Ready to go, so.
Thought I would try it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Good luck
Appreciate
tomorrow.
it, thank you.
The additional availability with Cindy Bart will happen next door. If you could just exit out the normal way you came in and kind of come around through the hallway versus going through this door. Any other questions about the bowl or tomorrow? Our staff will stick around to